What really happens when you finally choose yourself. Not the Instagram version, not the spa day version, but the quiet, trembling kind. When you whisper, "I can't keep betraying myself just to be loved." Carl Jung once wrote that the greatest act of courage is to stand by your own soul when the world demands your compromise. But here's the paradox. The moment you truly choose yourself, your old life starts to fall apart. Friends drift away. Partners turn distant. You stop fitting inside the stories that once defined you, and you start asking questions that scare people. Questions like, why am I still performing for people who wouldn't notice if I vanished? Why does my kindness feel like a cage? And why does choosing peace feel like losing everything? Jung called this the rupture of adaptation, that moment when your outer life can no longer hide your inner truth. It feels like your world is collapsing, but really, it's only your false self dissolving. Maybe you felt it too. That strange mix of grief and freedom, when you finally stop fighting for a place you've outgrown, when you realize you can't save everyone, not even yourself, from the truth of who you've become. Most people don't wake up one morning and decide, I'm going to start choosing myself. No, it usually begins with exhaustion. You give and give and give, until one day, you have nothing left to give. Not even an apology for being tired. You start noticing the little things. The way your phone lights up only when someone needs something. The way your smile feels rehearsed. The way your silence fills every room. But no one seems to notice the weight it carries. Jung wrote that many people lose their souls long before they lose their lives. They call it maturity, responsibility, being realistic. But what it really means is that they've forgotten how to belong to themselves. Maybe you know that feeling, that invisible ache that sits beneath your ribs. The one that says, I'm so tired of being everything to everyone. Jung called this the divine discontent, the soul's rebellion against inauthentic living. It's not depression. It's the beginning of resurrection. When your soul gets tired of pretending, it begins to sabotage your persona. You start forgetting to care about things that don't matter. You start losing interest in conversations that never go anywhere. You start wanting silence more than attention. That's not burnout. That's clarity. And clarity always comes with a cost. Because the moment you see what drains you, you can never go back to pretending it doesn't. Choosing yourself is not glamorous. It's a psychological death, a shedding, a dismantling of every identity you built to earn love. When Jung studied the individuation process, he found that every person who began the journey first had to face their own shadow, everything they denied, suppressed, or sacrificed for approval. The good girl who always smiled, the loyal son who never spoke up, the caretaker who healed everyone but herself. Jung said the shadow doesn't destroy you. It only wants to be seen. When you finally stop running from yourself, the shadow stops chasing you, and instead, it starts teaching you. It teaches you that anger is not evil. It's clarity. It shows you that sadness is not weakness. It's depth, and that loneliness isn't punishment. It's a mirror, showing you the difference between connection and dependency. But this part of the journey is the descent. It's the point of no return. You begin seeing the truth in everything, and it breaks your heart. You notice how often people lie just to keep the peace. You see how families pretend everything's fine while bleeding beneath the surface. You see how workplaces reward obedience over truth, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's what Jung called the burden of consciousness. He wrote, to become conscious is a terrible thing, because awareness isolates before it liberates. When you finally choose yourself, you begin to feel like you're living in a different reality. Everyone else still believes in the play. You can see the strings, and the actors, and the emptiness behind the applause. Jung said, "This is when the soul begins its rebellion. You can't lie to yourself anymore. Not about love, not about work, not about who you've become." And that's when the fear sets in. Because now, you know too much. Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." That's the revelation. Not choosing yourself in theory, but living with the consequences of doing so. When you choose yourself, you stop playing the role society gave you. You stop being the nice one, the reliable one, the one who never makes waves. And that scares people. They'll call you selfish, cold, unkind, because your boundaries expose their dependence. But here's what Jung discovered about these moments of rupture. They are sacred. They are how the unconscious becomes conscious. He said the psyche doesn't evolve through comfort. It evolves through contradiction, through the tension of opposites. Every no you say is not rejection. It's a sacred act of alignment. It's your soul saying, "I will no longer betray myself to keep you comfortable." And maybe that's why you feel so misunderstood right now, because you're speaking a language that few people have learned, the language of boundaries spoken with love. The old you would have over-explained. Now, you just say, "No, that doesn't work for me," and sit in the silence. That silence, that's your new power. It's the sound of integrity returning home. Jung called this phase integration. It's when your light and shadow stop fighting and start cooperating. You no longer need to prove your worth by suffering. You no longer seek love by shrinking. You no longer confuse peace with people-pleasing. And when that happens, you become something very few people can handle. Calm, not passive, not detached, just calmly rooted in truth. Jung warned that this kind of peace is dangerous, because it can't be manipulated, and nothing threatens the collective unconscious more than an individual who can't be controlled. Maybe that's why your quiet confidence makes some people nervous. They can feel that you no longer need their approval, and when you don't need to be liked, you become free when you finally choose yourself above all else. You stop waiting for rescue. You realize that no one is coming, and that's not tragedy. That's liberation, because no one else can walk your path. No one else can interpret your dreams. No one else can live your unlived life. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But he also warned, you will not be applauded for it. You will be misunderstood. You will be called difficult, distant, even arrogant, because your self-respect will look like rebellion to those who once benefited from your lack of it. But slowly, something begins to shift. The loneliness turns into clarity. The grief turns into grace. The silence turns into strength. You start meeting people who speak the same quiet language. People who respect your no. People who don't need to fix you. People who recognize your peace because they've earned their own. Jung called these connections the meeting of individuated souls. He said they recognize each other instantly, not by appearance, but by presence. They don't drain you. They don't demand you. They simply meet you, fully awake. And that's when you realize something profound. Choosing yourself didn't make you selfish. It made you sacred. Because when you finally belong to yourself, you stop belonging everywhere you don't. The world around you may still be chaotic. People may still misunderstand you, but none of it owns you anymore. You're no longer driven by fear. You're led by truth. You're no longer chasing approval. You're guided by peace. Maybe this is the real miracle. Not that you changed, but that you stopped betraying yourself to survive. Jung called that individuation, the process of becoming whole, of integrating every lost fragment of who you are. You stop trying to fix others. You start holding space for yourself. You stop seeking love as a transaction. You start radiating it as truth. And in that quiet, you finally understand what Jung meant when he said, "The world will ask you who you are. And if you do not know, the world will tell you, now you know. You know who you are. You know what you will no longer tolerate. And you know that peace, true peace, is not found in being liked, but in being real. That's the cost of consciousness and the reward of courage. So if this story found you tonight, comment below. I hear the code, because someone else will read it and feel less alone. You're not too much. You're just finally enough for yourself. And that is what happens when you finally choose yourself. Above all else,